Hello, everyone. First of all, you're welcome. This is Mark.
This is Simon. Get ready for some stimulating conversation
And some controversial topics.
Ooh, this is going to be good.
And you don't want to miss it.
Stay tuned.
Because
You're welcome.
Hey!
Welcome
Everybody's
to another
welcome.
show.
Go ahead. Say something.
Say something, Dallas.
No. He's
I
wearing...
have to say something.
No.
No, don't say nothing.
Studio audience, if you can't see his shirt, it's a throwback Tony Romo shirt.
What was the word you said? Throwback.
Yeah, so...
Throw it all the way back.
Throw
Throw it in the trash.
Look, the reasons, actually, listening audience, the reasons why we're wearing these shirts, he's a Man United shirt, yes, of course, and mine is usually blue, but it's a Birmingham City shirt. So Birmingham City are in the League Championship League, and Manchester United are in the Premier League.
The best league.
Yes, anyway, I've been following my team all my life, so I'm a blue nose through and through, for those who may understand that. And we both, Rupert also, we all had victories this weekend. But the topic is
Man United. If you watched the game, you would saw a dynamic score, which is known as a bicycle kick. But those who don't know what that is when the ball is kicked in backwards like this with the leg. Hard to do. You can't practice it. It just happens. Apps, as they say on the network, brilliant. It was just brilliant.
Anyway, the bicycle kick actually is when the ball is going to cross. If you're going to kick it with your right foot, you jump up with your left, and then you rotate your right foot towards the goal. Most likely, most times, the ball just shoots anyway because it's not an easy kick. But if you hit it correctly, like Mr. Gamacho did for Manchester United, then he's going to go down as one of the greatest. So,
and the best part of all is that it was a shutout 3-0.
And the thing is, one of the first persons who did it, who is now the coach of Birmingham City, was Rooney. He did a bicycle kick for Manchester United also, but he needs to do a couple of bicycle kicks for Birmingham City right now because ain't nothing really going down. He got his first win out of 6. So anyway, what are we here for anyway?
But Mr. Rupert is about to say something.
Okay, go ahead.
About some Dallas Cowboys. I think.
No. I was just gonna say, but originally the first bicycle kick that I ever saw was from Pele.
From Pele,
yes.
Oh, true.
Brazil.
True.
That's the first one I've ever saw.
True.
So that was great.
Right.
But there's been many others.
Yes.
The one from Ronaldo was sweet because it was a Man U.
Ronaldo was good. Yeah. Ronaldo
was good.
But your shirt is burning my eyes, man. I can't.
It's Messi. I know the shirt burned a lot of people's eyes this weekend.
No, Messi ain't never do it, man. No, Messi ain't never.
Messi never did it.
No.
He's still the greatest right now. All right.
No, he's not. Okay.
But tonight, guys,
we have a
great show tonight.
Yes, we do.
We're excited. We have 2 guests we're proud to have on tonight. One is John Wolf. Yes, 2.
We hope.
Well, one is John Wolf, who was a warden in the Maryland Correctional Center.
Yes.
And the other one is Rudolph Williams, who was once on the other side of the track, but now has found his way into the house of the Lord. Both of them have different stories, but they both have a common denominator, and that is they made their way to the cross. So we're going to bring John Wolf in first. Amen.
Hey, John.
Hey, John, man, we're so glad to have you with us tonight. And, I am going to start off the bat by asking the question, why did you want to be a warden in the correctional facility?
I didn't. I never set out to do that. But before you guys, you almost put me to sleep because you're all talking about soccer. Not like it's a real sport or anything. So.
Wait a minute.
What's a real sport? Please let me know.
Much as I dislike Dallas Cowboys, at least it's football. The real
Football
thing.
is a real, you said it right though. Football is a real sport, but it's in a
Right.
different country.
Different country.
American football.
Hey. This is not a sports debate show. Come on.
Yeah, but wait a minute. We better stop because he might have doors for us to go in.
My question:
Yeah.
what made you want to be a correctional warden in the correctional?
Well, I don't think anybody wakes up and just decides they want to work in a prison. I didn't grow up that way. But when I got worked through college, I was a criminal justice major. I knew I wanted to have a career in law enforcement. I wasn't sure in what branch. So coming out of college, I put in applications with various police agencies and parole and something called corrections. I wasn't even sure what that was.
Mm-hmm.
Corrections answered first, and they were actually paying better to start out than most people at that time. That was back in 1978.
Wow.
So I started as a correctional officer in the Maryland Penitentiary and worked there. I was in the penitentiary for about 4 years and transferred to another facility. And we worked my way up through the ranks, and it goes like military, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, and got into administration as chief of security and then assistant warden. And then in 2007, I was appointed warden at the Supermax facility in Baltimore.
So did you ever have your own office?
As a warden, I did, yes.
What's a Supermax? So what's a Supermax facility?
The Supermax facility was something that was popular in prisons through the 90s and then through the 2010s or so. And they've since gone by the wayside. But they took the worst of the worst. The guys in the prison system who were the most violent, the death row guys, the guys that created problems within the prison system, those are the ones that went to the Supermax facilities.
Okay.
So I was warden there for about a year, and then I was transferred to maximum security prison in Jessup. And that was a large prison. They had 1,800 inmates there and had a staff of about 600 people. So it's a big prison, and I was warden there for 8 years, which is more than twice as long as any other warden lasted. So I must have been doing something right.
Wow. Now, did those wardens last? Did they not last, John, because they were they wanted to leave or they were let go? Why did they last?
A little bit of both. Some retired. Some were told to retire. Some were simply let go. It was a very tough prison, and it was not unusual for wardens not to last too long.
Wow.
But not that I'm all that, but apparently I did something right, and I was able to stay there a long time. And we transitioned into different purposes over the years.
So
after that, I went.
This question I have.
Sure.
Oh no, the question is we echoing real good here. Your first 6 months, you walk into that jail on your very first job. You go inside. Your first 6 months of jail. How was that? Because I know it's got to be totally different.
Culture shock.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pure culture shock. I was born and raised in Baltimore, but I lived in a very nice section of Baltimore, and we were row homes, but it was a nice area. And I mean, today you call it suburbs, but it was in the city. So going to the prison system was a culture shock for me, absolutely. And it was common that pretty much within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you know if you could do the job or not, because the job's not for everybody. You hear those steel doors clang behind you, shut, and you're locked in there just like anybody else is. It's a different situation completely. But it's something that as I got into it, and I was a young man, I was 22 going into that job. There was a lot of in penitentiary. There was a lot of violence going on there, and we got involved in breaking up fights a good part of the time, and And, you know, you get that adrenaline rush, and that was kind of something that I was okay with as a young man.
Mhm.
And I want to say I was lucky, but I wasn't lucky. And God was looking out for me in the different situations I found myself in. You know, I could have, should have had something serious happen to me, and it didn't. But for the grace of God, you know, and I wasn't a Christian back then. But
I was going to ask you that. So when you're working in the prison system, you were a Christian or you were not a Christian, or when did you become into the Christian faith?
when I first went in, I was not a Christian. Well, I was born and raised Catholic, so I mean, I knew about Christianity, but I did not have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That came about when I was 32. I had a salvation experience through my own faults. I mean, God has a powerful testimony in my life. And he pulled me out of places I shouldn't have been. And, you know, had problems with drugs and alcohol as a young man. And Christ brought me out of that. He restored me and brought me to a saving knowledge of him. But, and I was not the same person after that. But as a young man in the prison system, it was very different from anything I ever experienced. You know, just a lot of violence and killings and just violent assaults. And I'd never been exposed to that kind of thing before. But, you know, you get that when you find yourself in those situations, then you have that fight or flight syndrome that you read about and hear about. And if you're going to fall into that flight syndrome, well, you're in the wrong line of work. You know, so.
Got the next question. My question is, okay, then, of course, there's got to be a first. The first fight that you had to break up, or did you ever have to break up a fight, or how dangerous was that fight?
Yeah, many times I have found myself in those situations. Unfortunately, a lot of times there were knife fights. And back then we didn't, it is different nowadays from what it was back then. We didn't carry any, I mean, all you had is a pair of handcuffs and a set of keys. That was a radio. That was the only, you didn't have weapons on you. I mean, nowadays the officers carry a lot of pepper spray, and we didn't have that back then. We had it, we didn't use it. You just went in and broke up stuff, and the main thing I always try to do was control the knife. You know, you saw that whoever had the shanks, you would try to get a hold of that and control it so they couldn't stab you or stab the other guy. Or, you know, a lot of times fortunately, the guys who were fighting most of the time would not turn and go after the officers. They were trying to go after a certain guy for whatever reason. And then we'd be more about restraining the situation. But it's not an easy thing to do. You try to restrain or handcuff a man and doesn't want to be handcuffed. It's not easy. So you get into altercations and I mean, I was young then and I was in shape and you know, it was something that didn't bother me too much. But like I say, I was blessed.
So the question I have is, when you transition from the correction officer to a warden, right? You're going from in the cell with the people every day. Now you're behind the desk and it's a different type of job.
Right.
What kind of similarities were there, or what did it entail for you, the job with dealing with people? Like, did you help rehabilitate them? What was being a warden like on a daily basis?
Well, the transition was a very gradual one because, like I said, you move up through the ranks. So you go to sergeant and lieutenant, and each rank you move up, you're moving to more of a training module and leadership modules, and you get unfortunately, you get bogged down with paperwork, like a lot of jobs. And so what you do on a daily basis is a gradual transition to the place where, and of course you'll learn as you go. And as you get higher in rank, you get closer to working with other wardens and other administrators. So you learn as you go. And then once you're in that warden position, well, obviously it's a leadership position and it's a lot of responsibility, but I also have a team that's working for me. Like I said, when I was at the Jessup Correctional Institution, I had almost 600 people working for me, and that included all departments. So to be a warden I've often heard it described, and I think very accurately, it's akin to being the mayor of a small city. I had a dietary department, a finance department, a maintenance department, all these different people, and of course a large security department, and we worked 24/7. So we had 3 shifts of people that are working. We're feeding 3,000 meals 3 times a day. You got to maintain, and like I say, Jessup was a compound of about 35 to 40 acres. Had about 20 buildings in there. Amongst that were 6 housing units. We had a prison industry shop that we ran. I had a small hospital that we ran. So I had medical staff that worked for me. So a lot of it goes into it. And of course, every different department has a department head. And of course, I'm over all these guys as a warden. So like I said, it's a lot that goes into it. You learn along the way.
Okay, I have a question that's coming from someone very close and dear to my heart. But before I ask you this question, is how long? Okay, when you did start your journey with God, how many more years did you have before you retired in the jail? So if you was in there 30 years, how many years was you?
I was in corrections for 40 years.
40 years, yes.
I was in 10 years before my salvation experience, so I had 30 years in the system as a warden. Well, okay. As a Christian, excuse me. I was in it 30 years and in the higher ranks at that point. Okay,
so this question comes from my daughter Sabrina. She says, while you was in there, did your increased spirituality help you with your job? And do you feel like that contributed to your longevity?
Absolutely.
Yep.
When a person is in a situation that has a high degree of violence.
Okay.
And that's how prisons are. They're violent places. It's a very negative environment, and it's easy to fall into a negative mindset. It's easy to be angry about a lot of things, what you see and what you experience. And I've had some of that as a young man, but knowing Christ, it changed perspective. It changed my perspective about things. Being a Christian helped me to be a better leader for my staff, which was extremely important.
Wow.
To help keep them in the right frame of mind, to help keep them doing the right thing. People will follow leaders who are doing the right thing, or that they perceive are doing the right thing. So that was the first thing. You have to set an example as a good leader. Now, being a person who's a Christian and trying to be a good Christian, that was something that kind of came naturally to me once I learned how to do that. And I had other people of a similar stature to me who also were Christians. I can't tell you how many times I'd go behind closed doors and pray and have people pray with me. Mm-hmm. Other administrators, other supervisors, people that I knew for years. Because situations come up that are really nasty and life-threatening, and we take opportunities to pray. I would have opportunities I was one of those guys. I was a warden that walked the compound, and I talked to the inmates on a regular basis. Most people don't know this, but your typical prisons are almost like a college campus, and that guys will be walking on the compound on a daily basis. I'll have a couple hundred guys walking out in the compound, either for recreation or they're going to one appointment or they're going to school, because we ran schools. They're going to a medical appointment. They're going to the chow hall. They're going this place or the other. And as a good manager, I would walk the compound. I walk the housing units, and I talk to the guys on a regular basis. I talk not just to the inmates, but talk to my staff, because it's important that you do that. You have to get out and talk to people. That's how you find out what's going on. You can't sit in an office, know what's going on in your business, whether it's a prison or any other kind of, you got to be out and talk to people to find out, to know what's happening. So I would have opportunities to talk to a lot of the inmates, and they would come to me, obviously, with problems, and I was able to resolve quite a bit of them for them. And I was one of those people that I would respond to them, and if I didn't have an answer, I'd get back to them, and I'd write them a note the next day, get them a note right back to their cell, what I did to what their issue was, and they really appreciated that. So because I carried myself like that, and because I talked to these guys, and I would look them dead in the eye and tell them, no, I'm not going to do that. And I found they would appreciate that too. I could walk the compound amongst a couple hundred guys and feel relatively safe as a warden. So I don't know if I answered your question, but being a Christian helped me carry myself in a positive manner.
Yeah, you answered.
So, since we've heard your side, we're going to try to bring in Rudolph, who is on the other side, and help us talk a little bit about that. So let's welcome Rudolph Williams. Hopefully his camera is working for him. It looks like he may be still having a little slight technical difficulties, but while we're waiting for him to connect,
yes,
we'll bring in some more questions.
Simone Scott.
Simone.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I think it must be father-daughter night tonight, because Simone wants to ask you this question. Was it a specific scenario or incident that made you decide you needed to develop a personal relationship with Christ?
Yes. Like I mentioned earlier, as a young man, I drank too much and I did some drugs. And I found myself in a place where my marriage had fallen apart. I had two young sons at home, and we were separated, and I knew my mind wasn't right. I wasn't right. And went into rehab, did a 30-day rehab. And through that rehab and the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, that was started me on my path to finding God in my life, because God was not a part of my life. Okay. And when I got out of the rehab, my wife and I started going to church together, and I heard the word of the Lord for the first time in my life.
Amen.
Went to a Southern Baptist church, and being raised Catholic, it was like, I can't get into a Baptist church, and I'm Catholic. You know? But I did, and
you have to start clapping.
Yeah. No, wait a minute. I didn't do that until I got into Pentecostal church. Pentecostal church, I can not only I can sing and clap at the same time, and I actually can take a couple of steps too. So that's been a long progression.
So I have a question for you. So in prison, a lot of the inmates find Jesus, if you will.
Yes.
So do a lot of them use that as a means to attend certain programs, or they looked upon, have more favor, or any type of thing like that?
Yes and no. There's a lot of activities that go on with. There are a lot of religious activities in prisons. As a warden, I had over 17 denominations of religions I had to accommodate and provide services for. Probably 8 or 9 of those were Christian denominations. There are several Muslim denominations. Muslims are probably the largest group in the prison system. At JCI had 1,800 inmates. I had over 700 Muslims. So that's a very large group. A lot of guys will join a particular group for protection, to have a sense of belonging. And that's really, I think, a necessary part for people who are incarcerated, to have people around them they can rely on somewhat, and have a measure of protection, if you will. Doesn't always work. Some guys absolutely get saved while they're in prison. God puts people every place. God has people in prison. I knew guys that committed the most horrible crimes because I had access to their folders and knew what they did on the street. But that got them into prison in the first place. But in talking to them one-on-one, I believe they were sincere Christians. And I would see the way they're carrying themselves on a daily basis. I'd win their cells. I knew it was in their cells. I knew that was their house, so I knew what they had and I knew what they were into because I had a good intelligence about who was into what in my prison. So, yeah, guys get converted in prison to Christianity. Absolutely. There's some people who they came in as Christians. Christians are sinners too.
Well, along that lines, my wife is asking a question. Would you recommend this position for a Christian?
Sure.
And why would you?
And I say that with a caveat that the job's not for everybody. Everybody's not cut out to work in a prison, and that's it's just what it is. Some people, that steel door closes behind you, and you hit that, your eyes pop open and panic in your chest, and I got to get out of here. Then okay, fine, go ahead and leave. Job's not for you. It's not a problem. But there's plenty of positions in law enforcement that people can do. And I like to see Christians in law enforcement positions because if you're a Christian, you're not going to intentionally go out and do the wrong thing. That doesn't mean you're not going to sin, but you like to believe you're not going to be a pattern of sin. You're not going to be a crooked cop, that crooked CO that's taking advantage of inmates.
What was that show that was on where it talked about the crooked cops? What was it?
Oh, the one that was in
Baltimore.
The one was in Baltimore. Did you ever see that show?
Oh, The Wire?
No, there's the one after that. I saw The Wire.
It was worse.
It was the crooked cop.
Was it 8 of them or something?
Policeman, and they had it on that show. I guess I'll have to Google that.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah.
Well, there's a question from Brother Dexter. He's saying, did the inmates try to ever hurt you anyway?
Absolutely. As a line officer, I was attacked on several occasions. As an administrator, as a warden, as a CO, I had a hit put on me.
Whoa. Back that up, sir. Back that up. Wait a minute. Come on now. Back that one up. Come on.
You just can't glance over that one, John. Oh,
Well, you gotta let us know. You're not a Cowboys fan, so let us know, please.
Well, there was a particular altercation, and this was in a penitentiary, and I was maybe 23, 24 at the time, and I got into a fight with an inmate. There was 3 of us officers trying to restrain this guy, and he was literally bouncing us off the walls. He was a pretty big dude, and it was the Dickens trying to handcuff this guy, and we never could do it. Finally, another officer came up who was a big dude. This guy had played semi-pro ball, was an offensive tackle. He was like 6'5", 280, and he just come up with the guy in a bear hug. And so we got him cuffed up. But anyway, as a result of that, this was before I was a Christian, and I didn't act in a very Christian manner. I took a couple shots at this guy's ribs. Ooh. And there's an unwritten rule that when you're in something like that, if the inmate's not throwing punches, then you don't throw punches. Mm-hmm. I kind of let my anger get the best of me. And I gave him a couple shots in the ribs, which didn't affect him at all. But afterwards, word on the street was there was a hit on me. So they walked me out of the prison, and I took a couple of days off, and then everything calmed down. It was okay. Now later on, as a warden, I got information that the make and model of my car and my license plate was sold to BGF, and they had a hit on me. So that was a little more serious situation.
Wow.
And I had notified my local police and had a little bit of police protection for a while until that calmed down. So yeah, sometimes things like that happen. We own this city. I never heard of that show. We own the city.
We own the city, yeah. But so because right now, studio audience, we're supposed to have someone who was in jail. So apparently, we're having technical difficulties, and he can't get that get out of jail card free. So we waiting for him, and hopefully, prayerfully, he can get on. But there's a question I gotta ask, and I gotta say this: Bishop Fulton Parham. Actually, he was on last week. Yeah. And we appreciate you watching the show, sir. His question was something I also had to ask. Is it's from working behind the wall. Yeah, the reality of you in jail and TV jail.
Yeah.
Reality of jail and what they show on TV. Now I know they have a lot of shows where they do have. I remember a show where the guy went into these jails just to see how they were. Give me a version or a view of how you think about reality jail and TV jail.
They're worlds apart.
The world? You said world?
World?
Yes. They're not, it had very little to do with reality. I don't watch prison shows. Like, was it Orange is Black or
Orange and the New Black? I was about to say the Orange and the New Black.
I never watched that. I knew some guys that did, and they would tell me stories. I'm like, man, you got to be kidding me. It's like my father-in-law was a Baltimore City cop for over 20 years, and he would never watch police shows because they were just so ridiculous, out of touch with reality. It's nothing like that. So no, I don't watch prison shows at all. So, and TV, they glamorize everything. Much of prison life is very routine. It's all routine. It's 95% routine and boredom and trying to keep yourself mentally active and alert, and then 2% or 5% of intense adrenaline rush, very serious stuff. Unfortunately, those type of things don't happen every day, but some places they do, and some places are more violent than others.
So how did you feel about how did you feel about Scared Straight, where they would take teenagers to the jails? How much reality was that?
I kind of like that. I thought, and I ran that in my prison. Statistically, it was not effective. I had people tell me that, quote, the wise people, whatever, they said it never worked, it wasn't effective. But I always believe that if it got one guy to turn around, then it was worth it. Because we would bring in kids from local school systems. We had arrangement with, I think it was Anne Arundel County. They had I don't know what you would call it, but the class where they put all the troubled kids in school and high school. Right. And we had a running agreement with them, and every year they bring in a group of guys and girls, usually 8 or 10, 12 of them, and we bring them in and walk them through the prison. And we had a group of convicts that were really dedicated to this, and most of them were lifers, but these were guys, and several of them were what I consider good, solid Christians. A couple of them were the Muslims, but they were older inmates who kind of had it together, if you will. They had an established life within the prison system. Never leaving prison. They knew that. So they had an established life in the prison. There were guys that I could trust that would talk to these young people and try to pound some sense into them, so to speak. And I thought they were very good at what they did. And some of these kids, if it didn't affect them, well, God bless them. I don't know why I wouldn't. I mean, you really got to be a hardhead to walk into a maximum security prison and listen to the stories these guys told. And I mean, because there's a thing that people know about called felony murder. A lot of people don't understand what that is.
No, what's that?
Quite a few guys were doing life in prison for felony murder. They never killed anybody. One guy in particular was a jewelry robbery in Pikesville, and there was 3 guys involved, 3 bad guys involved in this jewelry heist. And in the midst of this jewelry robbery, one fellow shot and killed the owner of the jewelry store. Well, all 3 of those guys were convicted of felony murder. And the other 2 fellows who never pulled a trigger, they're doing life in prison for felony murder, even though they never killed anybody. So, these young guys that go out with buddies and want to do something stupid, and they do a carjacking, whatever it is they're doing these days, if you're not the guy pulling the trigger, you're just along for the ride, guess what? You're going to get hit life for murder for help for felony murder.
Right.
And a lot of them don't realize this kind of stuff. So this is one of the things that the older cons would always tell these young people when they had them in. And you would see some eyes open up at that, because especially when you're young, you don't think about, well, I mean, look, one of my favorite sayings is young men do stupid things.
True.
And Lord knows I did. And I'm going to say you guys probably did too. Young men do dumb stuff that we should have, been killed or seriously injured or maybe end up in jail behind doing it. But for the grace of God, I didn't end up on the wrong side of that fence. But a lot of young men do. So that's kind of stuff that they would explain to these kids. And hopefully it made a difference. Like I say, if it worked with one kid, it was worth the effort putting on this program.
So go ahead, Rupert.
So this question is from Anita.
Oh, yeah.
After day was done, did you always take the same route home?
No, but there's only certain ways of getting in and out of Jessup and getting up the road, so and I wasn't armed either for the most part. After I got that threat that they had my car and license plate, I carried a weapon then, and I never liked doing it. I was never comfortable, but you do what you got to do.
Yeah, and this one I think is a simple one. I think the answer is simple. How much of your personal life did you share, if any, with the inmates? I'm not sure.
Very little. Very little. I mean, it depends on who I was talking to. There's somebody I knew, and there's guys I knew for 30 years. There were guys. It sounds crazy, but there were guys I knew in the penitentiary when I was a young man, and they were young men, and they were doing dumb stuff. In fact, that fellow I was telling you about that I kind of lost a little bit and gave him a couple of jabs, I ran into him 30 years later in the Jessup prison. And of course, he was older, but he's in his 50s. And like me, he kind of got a gut on him, and he's aged, and he had a nice little job in the prison. He would come to me, like, when I first ran into him, I saw him, I said, oh, Lord, here we go. And he greeted me like an old friend, come up, shook my hand, how you doing, Mr. Wolf? Good to see you. And we got to talking every time, and he was one of the fellows that would come to me on the sly and tell me, hey, go hit cell 22 over there because they got shanks, or they got, this guy's running dope, he's trying to control the tier. They would tell me things like this because this was their home. That tier was where they lived. Mm-hmm. And as guys got older, they just wanted to do their time, leave me the heck alone. They didn't want to be trouble with all this dumb stuff the young guys bring in. Mm-hmm. So they would let me know things. And sure enough, I'd go back, have my night shift going there at 1 o'clock in the morning and shake the cell down and get a couple shanks. And it was all about trying to keep the violence down in the prisons. That was our main goal always.
Yes, sir. But before he asks you a question, all them years you inside the jail, nickname. You have any nicknames, or did anybody call you anything outside?
They called me a lot of things.
Give us. Let me give you a voice of Rupert. Give me some more. You just they did. Give us some nicknames.
I didn't have a nickname. When I was a warden, it was always Warden Wolf or Mr. Wolf or Hey Warden. Guys, some of the young guys would get smart, and they call me out of my name, so to speak.
What's the worst name you've been called at your name? The one that you told us.
Well, no, that wasn't worse because I would hear that all the time. I remember we were talking beforehand, but it was a particular conversation with him, and this was probably 10 years ago, and I'm in my late 50s, and this inmate I was talking to, he was an older guy, and I'd known him for 30 years, and he was upset about something, but he called me a cracker and the N-word in the same sentence, in the same conversation. So, I told him, I said, come on, man. And the other inmates that were around us, they started laughing. I said, man, I can't be both. Give me one or the other.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, you say cracker and the N-word. We say Negro. Okay, so
well, I've been called that too. I mean,
was you a good dancer or something like that? I mean, what would they call you?
They had a lot of names that I'd rather not use that kind of language.
Yeah. Wow.
And also, tell us, because you said that, the inmates would ask you for stuff,
Sure.
favors. So tell us, what was the craziest thing an inmate asked you to do while you were there?
Well, they always, so they asked me for a release, or can you get my girlfriend in my cell, something stupid like that.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Come on.
it might have boosted his morale a little bit, but some of the other guys might have been upset about it.
So wait, so
It'll be a
when
story.
the guy asked you, can I get my girlfriend to come? What did he really think you were going to? Did he really think you were going to say yes, or was he just joking?
No, he's just being a smart aleck.
When they gonna pay you for it?
Right.
When they gonna pay you for it?
Yeah, they might offer it, but no, that wasn't going to happen. Now, on the other hand, when we were in Jessup, I worked at 2 large prisons in Jessup over the years, and we would have what's called family days.
Okay.
Whereas we would allow, it's kind of like a picnic scenario. We'd have burgers and dogs and chicken and sides and stuff. And the guys would be able to have family members come in. Wife, girlfriend, mom, dad, children, at a certain age, the children. And we'd allow them to come in in a controlled environment. And it was really a positive thing that we did, because one of the things that suffers the most, and I'm sure Rupert would attest to that, is family connections suffer the most when you're in prison. It's one thing to talk to a person on the phone, writing the letter. It's an entirely different thing to see them face to face and get a hug or a handshake and a kiss. So the family days were big. And yes, I've eaten the meals cooked by the inmates.
Yeah.
I mean, when I did the prison ministry, they would have a thing where they had the inmates cook. The inmates cook some good food.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So
There was some good cooks in there. We had guys that could cook up a storm. It was all limited by ingredients that were available.
Right.
But yeah, we some guys could
Eat
cook.
it. But would you eat it?
No.
yes.
Sometimes, yes.
Or
Not always.
when you had the hit on you,
Exactly.
At that point in my life, I was brown bagging it to I was running down the road.
Hey, Jeremy, come over here, please.
Taste this.
Taste the food.
Yeah, I have my taste testers, I bring up a lieutenant. Hey, come here, man. Try some of this out for me.
So, John, when I would do the prison ministry down where I live, there was a young man, which we heard about, that once he got out, he was a guy who was coming to the religious service. A young man was on fire for God. But when he got out, unfortunately, he got hooked up with the same crowd he was running with, and they found his body in the back of a trunk. And I was saying to myself, he would have been better off had he stayed in the system. It was almost like the prison pretty much saved his life. But once he got out, he got back into the same environment that got him into jail in the first place.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. But as we see and we read the papers every day, there's stupid young men with guns. They just don't seem to care, and don't even care what they're shooting at. Sometimes several 5-year-old girls get shot, because they're happened to be in a line of fire, and this idiot didn't care about his backstop. Yeah, I don't understand that piece of it, but
So my question is, I guess today, do you think that young men are scared or not to go to jail? Because it's just everything's just happened so quick.
no,
They run the bullet.
not at all. They used to well, I'm gonna put it this way, by the time they get to me, they've had a half dozen bites of the apple already. Because they're gonna, in the prison system, once you get to the prison system, you've already been in the jail system several times. And there's a difference between jail and prison. And
Right.
with the Baltimore, I was commissioner of pretrial detention, which is what the old Baltimore City Jail was. So guys in city jail and any jail are innocent. They're awaiting trial. At the same time, if you went and get DUI tonight in Baltimore, you're going to go to Baltimore City Jail and at least spend the night there until you get seen by a court commissioner. So you have a lot of people in jails who are there on a temporary basis, or they're serving a short sentence, like 18 months or less. So that's using the jail system. Prison system, if you get 18 months or more, then you're coming into the prison system. So by the time they get in the prison system, usually they've been to jail a couple of times. You know, they've gotten probation once or twice. They've gotten 3 months in jail. They've done 6 months. They've done 9 months, or they had an 18-month bit. Now they got a 3-year bit or a 5-year bit in the prison system. And I saw guys doing, we call it doing a life on the installment plan. Guys would come in with 3-year bit, 5-year bit, 7-year bit, 10, 15. You know, he gets out after 7, comes back in with a 20-year sentence. Then he gets paroled after 12, and boom, within a year he's coming back in with another 20 or 25-year sentence. You know, guys would do this all the time, and it was a very discouraging thing to see, because you know I know these guys, and I'm like, man, you back again? What'd you do? Oh, you know, you know what it was? I got doing that dope again, and they get hung up in their addictions, and like the young man you mentioned, get back in with the wrong crowd. And it's so easy to do that because once you come out, where are you going to go? You can go back to family or friends. And unfortunately, that's the same situation you came out of. And it's like a drunk, you know, a recovered alcoholic walking into a bar. And you just don't do that. I mean, you're going to get drunk before you get somebody else sober. So you get back in the same environment, you're going to go back there and reoffend and do something stupid and find yourself back in prison.
Right.
Because that's what you guys are hanging out with or doing. Peer pressure is a powerful thing.
Absolutely.
So John, not to cut anybody else off with a question, but I guess it's kind of to this light. Have you kind of thought about that next stage or that next phase for that person coming out of prison? Because you're a Christian now, you found Christ in jail, you've seen these things happening. Even when you were there, did you think about, hey, man, we got to find a way to bring these people, when they get out of prison, to a place where they're surrounded by Christians or Muslims or whatever it may be that can help them walk that stage? Or has counties done that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you something that I don't know if it'll upset some of your listeners or not, but I'm gonna say it anyway, because in the years I spent in prison, I made a lot of friends. When you get into life-threatening situations with people, you develop a bond with them. And I had some strong bonds with people I worked with. And as a warden, I met a lot of people. And what I'm getting to is I attended a lot of funerals and quite a few weddings over the course of my career. And I loved, and I hate to use this term, but I'm gonna use it. I loved going into, quote, black churches in Baltimore City. It's where most of my friends were, my coworkers were. They would get you had the funeral you went to because somebody's sister or mom passed, and you go to the funeral, and I'd hear the best sermons, the best words at funerals. I really would. And I would wonder to myself, because I knew these churches in neighborhoods were the same places that the inmates were coming from. And I wondered, where's the connection with the churches and the guys coming out of prison? And I didn't see one. and I didn't know, I didn't see it, but I didn't know if there was or not. So once I retired, and I was talking to you guys about this, and we started looking into this with another administrator I'd worked with over the years, who is now actually the Secretary of Public Safety for the state of Maryland, good solid Christian. And I had this conversation with her, and I wanted to see if there was a way we could make a strong connection, some kind of connection, preferably in my mind, a policy connection between the state of Maryland's correction system and local churches in the Baltimore metropolitan area, for the very thing we're talking about, to try to help these guys when they come back into the community, because 98% of the guys in prison are coming back to the community. And most of them are coming right back in our community where we live. So they're going to be our neighbors. And so how do you want them coming out? You want them to be productive citizens. I do.
Right.
So the church has to be able to help in some way.
True.
So we tried to make this connection. We put together a task force to make a strong connection between churches and with the state government, with the correction system. And you know, I know what I know. And as I've gotten older, I know that there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And when I see a good idea, I'm gonna steal it and I'm gonna use it. And we come to find out that other counties are already doing this kind of stuff. Prince George's County and Montgomery County are doing this, have strong policy connections between their correction systems and the churches. So we brought them into our discussion. We have several pastors involved in these discussions. And I think right now, I kind of haven't heard anything for a little bit of time, but I think they're basically, the department's working on policy to try to develop a policy and coordinate it with the churches, because what other counties have found to be effective is having that personal connection from a church member to an ex-con or returning citizens, and they call it nowadays. The terminology always changes, and I'm old school because I've been around forever, but and I don't want to offend anybody by using the word ex-con, but that's what came out of my mouth. So, but we want to try to make these connections so that when that guy coming back out of prison, he finds himself in a jackpot. He's already got somebody that he's talked to, that he's made a relationship with while he was behind bars. Now he's out. Well, that's somebody he can pick up the phone and talk to him. And look, this is where I'm at. I need some help. Can you help me with this? I mean, that's a thing that guys really lack. I mean, beside the fact that it's really hard to get a job and to get housing, because guys coming out, there's only certain jobs they can get into, you know, construction industry or food service, or you know, there's not a whole lot of things that guys are willing to hire them for, especially in a tough job market. And then housing is obviously an issue too, because not everybody wants to rent to returning citizens.
True.
So a lot of these things the department tries to work out before the guy gets released. They work out housing, they work out a job situation, they work out the parole situation, and all that gets taken care of before they're released. But where's the church in all this? I mean, obviously you can't force that on a guy, but if you start that relationship before they're released from the prison system, then the thinking is that's going to facilitate their process back into becoming a productive citizen, which is what everybody wants to happen.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's great. I think, yeah, definitely. I agree.
You got the next question? I got one myself, but you can read this last one. He said, is there a difference between an inmate and a convict?
No. Semantics. Convict is more of an old school term, and I tend to fall into that sometimes. And it's interesting, and it's a shame we don't have Rupert here, but over the years I've had prisoners tell me that they prefer the word convict over inmate, and vice versa. Some some of the guys think, well, convict has a stigmatism to it, but other guys are like, no, I was convicted of a crime. I'm convict, you know. And it's true, you know, and that's why you call them a convict, because they're convicted of a crime, you know. And inmate, and some people think that's the wrong word to use these days, and incarcerated persons, you know, whatever. It's a guy locked behind bars. You'll be taking his freedom away, and a lot of times for a darn good reason.
On a lighter note, is that Rudolph?
Yeah. He comes with 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
I finally got in, huh?
And
At
we're
least
about
I
to
got a
get
chance to get in.
unfortunately.
We're about to end the
Hey,
show,
look.
sir.
There's room. I know it's room at the cross, though. I'm all right. There's room
Well,
at the
you're gonna have
cross.
to
I
nail
made it in.
yourself right now, 'cause you're gonna have to nail yourself to the cross
Hey,
now.
listen.
'Cause you can't get on.
Hey, look. I can't help if you got a bootleg system, man. It didn't welcome me in, man. So the bootleg system, man, it didn't welcome me in, man. But anyway, I was listening.
Real quick, and like in a half a minute, tell us what was it like to be in confinement. In half a minute, if you can do that.
Half a minute, sir, because that's all we got.
What was it like to be in confinement?
That's your half a minute.
Well, I put it like this. It wasn't happy. It wasn't happy time.
Sure.
You know, it wasn't happy time. It was a situation that you had to deal with, you know. But you learn how to, one thing about the mind, it can adapt to any situation. So I adapted because I needed to, I had to in order to survive. But it wasn't no happy. I had to wake up with men every day, go sleep with men every day, hear people like the one right here. But you know, he had his pawns come out and tell us what to do. We only had 5-minute showers. You know, we couldn't do anything and everything. We couldn't go to the refrigerator when we were doing those things. So it wasn't happy. It wasn't nothing to write home about. No, you know. So that's what that is. Half a minute is up.
You know, we're gonna get you back. Another show where we'll get you back on so that we can give your story. 'Cause it's important here because we were hearing the side from the warden. He was a free man in prison, but you were a prisoner in prison, and it's a different side. But you both found Christ. We definitely want to hear your side of the story at some point. We just don't have the time today.
Yes, sir.
Right. So
That's
next
okay.
week, man, we're excited about next week. Next week's show, we're going to be dealing with entertainment versus preaching. So we're going to bring in a guest to speak on that one. We're going to break it. You've probably seen some interesting things out there on the YouTube.
Oh, we have.
Different styles of preaching. So the question is it entertainment or is it really preaching?
We're going to save that for next
We're
week.
going to save that for next week.
I don't know. A lot of people going to want to answer that one.
Right. So, John, man, we thank you for being on tonight. Rudolph, we apologize for the technical difficulty issues that you have, but we're going to bring you back. And for whatever reason, we keep having technical difficulties. Our camera keeps going out. So it must be a technical difficulty type of night.
Hey, John, one question. John.
Yeah, you got
Take your son to jail.
stop by the camera.
I did one time. I was able to take them on a brief tour of the prison. We opened up the prison for the families of the staff so they could see where Dad and worked.
Wow.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen.
Well, Dad, we appreciate you. You were great, John. You were great, man. Thank you.
Stay on for us. Stay on for us, please. Stay on, don't go anywhere. Just keep it up. We're going to close out. So, Marvin Simon, put us away.
You're welcome.
I am a warrior, a Christian warrior. You're welcome.
Every time you kept hitting this.